Welcome into this segment of Behind the Pen presented by mostvaluablepodcast.com. If you want to listen to the full podcast, go to blogtalkradio.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Also, we're on iTunes, so check us out there as well. Thank you all for listening as always, and enjoy the show. Because I have to talk Bears. I always talk Bears here on Behind the Pen. We are ending the show once more with the Chicago Bears, and not a lot of news going on in the Chicago Bears landscape. Of course, I can talk Mitch Trubisky every week. I'm sure you guys will get sick of it by now or by then or whenever I continue to talk about Trubisky. You guys will say, shut up, Rankin. Like, that's enough of Trubisky. We get it. I could talk Mike Glennon. I could talk about how Mike Glennon is kind of underrated, and I think he's going to be fine this year. I think people are sleeping on Mike Glennon. I'm going to say that every single week till the Bears season, starts to take shape here. I'm excited, though, for the preseason because that means Connor Shaw, by the way, re-signed with the Bears. He was on his way out of Lake Forest before being called because Mark Sanchez got hurt. He said, turn around, come back. We need you, Shaw. We need 4 quarterbacks on the roster. So Shaw's back, which is good. I'd like to see kind of the development of him. Also, of course, Trubisky and Glennon. Obviously, that goes without saying, but I wanted to focus this conversation today about the Chicago Bears and take a trip back to last year because, like I said, not really much in the news. I don't want to keep beating a dead horse about, the same kind of conversations we're having about 2017 Chicago Bears. So let's look at the 2016 Chicago Bears, and were they as bad as their record says? And does that mean they're going to be bad again next year? Well, is 6-10 in 2017 considered bad? I guess it depends the way you look at it. For the best case scenario for the Chicago Bears, right? The best case scenario for the Chicago Bears moving forward is that they're competitive enough to be in the playoff race entering December, right? Mike Glennon is your quarterback. He's played every game. He's posted solid numbers. We're seeing a development of this wide receiver core. If they eventually get a younger wide receiver, who knows? That's not until the future because they're most likely going to have to draft one. But I'm talking specifically of Kevin White, of course, and Cameron Meredith. And so that's probably ideal. Also, you got to make sure that they don't get hurt, right? You want this team to be on the field, especially defensively. Guys like Danny Trevathan, hopefully Kyle Long's healthy. Pernell McPhee putting together a full season. Akeem Hicks staying on the field. He's a monster. Lamar Houston coming back, so that'll be huge. Willie Young. Guys, this team has the potential to make some noise, but not enough noise to be legitimate. But that's the best case scenario for the Bears, that they're among the playoff teams, or at least in the conversation. In the conversation. That's all that they need to be. Because that means they're taking strides forward. Because last year, boy, did they regress. And I think now the Bears can take a breath of fresh air despite the controversy going on. Really, I don't know if it's a controversy, but there's something there, right, with Glennon coming in, and then out of nowhere they draft Trubisky without Glennon knowing, and Trubisky didn't even know that the Bears were going to take him, right? But that's something to kind of keep an eye on. But right now, it seems like what we're hearing from Mike Glennon is that he is straight focused on this being his roster, his team, his season, which is good. That's how you got to do it. So ideally, Glennon plays out this season. Trubisky continues to develop. He learns. Maybe gets a snap or two late in the year. I doubt it. I've been saying that it's going to be Glennon all year unless he gets hurt. And even if he does get hurt, it might be Sanchez in before Trubisky. So there's no rush on Mitch Trubisky. But I'm sorry. I can't help myself. I have to talk about 2017 a little bit. So let's go back to last year. So when I look at last year, I said they were going to go 10-6 and make the playoffs. Okay? You can laugh at me. It's fine. They went 3-13. It's cool. And mainly because Jay Cutler was coming back. Again, you can laugh at me. That's cool. Huge Jay Cutler guy. You guys know that by now. However, he stunk. He was just terrible. He sucked. And it sucked that in week 2 he got hurt, right? And then, in comes Brian Hoyer. So anyway, opening day against the Houston Texans, he got absolutely obliterated, did Cutler. That offensive line could not handle the Texans' pass rush. And when we looked at that game, there was a lot of concerns. And it took him 4 weeks to implement Jordan Howard into the equation, and eventually Howard ended up being the second leading rusher in the National Football League. So that's something to be extremely excited about. This running back core now, compared to last year, has a lot of chances to improve and be, it depends how Tariq Cohen plays out into the equation. We'll see how much they use the rest of their running backs. But anyway, we looked at that season last year in 2016, and one color went down. In stepped Brian Hoyer, and when you looked at the offensive numbers, they were putting up yards, right? 450 yards a game. But They were only scoring 17 to 20 points a game. That's not going to cut it. And eventually, when you looked at the overall numbers for the Chicago Bears in terms of scoring, they were in the bottom 5. They were among the likes of Houston, the Jets, the Browns, and the Rams. Bears ended up, I'm looking at the numbers right now, 17 and a half roughly points per game, which is the 5th worst in football. That was not good, right? There was a lot of offensive things to be excited about, like Cam Meredith, specific guys. But overall, this offense just couldn't score. And that had a lot to do with, the red zone offense. You blame Dow Loggins, that's cool, but you just didn't really have a capable quarterback behind center. And I'm going to defend Cutler but he wasn't anything last year. He didn't play well. He had two good games, played very well when he came back against the Vikings on Monday night. That was about it. Really the only game that I can remember Cutler playing well last season. So you had guys like Matt Barkley and, of course, Brian Hoyer. When he broke his elbow, when he broke his arm against the Packers, man, the season was over by then. But it was just a punch in the gut already, right? So you had to look. It was very hard to be a Bears fan last year. I admit it. It was rough. But, you had to look at it with an open mind and understanding the situation that was the Bears. And it was individual performances, individual expectations, and how they could grow specifically on the defensive end. But, oh my God, it was so hard, right, to evaluate that when all of their guys were injured. And then you had Pernell McPhee, Jarrell Freeman being the Bears' leading tackler, right, last season, and he was suspended for 4 games. And I mean, just like, that was the story of the Chicago Bears, right? You didn't really have time to evaluate guys because, Alshon suspended, Freeman suspended, Trevathan hurt, a lot of guys hurt, 20 guys on injured reserve. So you had to look at guys like Crevon LeBlanc. And I bring up Crevon LeBlanc because really, interestingly enough, people hate on Crevon LeBlanc. He's like an undrafted no-name from the Patriots, but he was ranked, I believe, he was the best in terms of defending passes. Whenever he was thrown to, I think he had the least completion percentage rate or passes defended, right? He was like at the top of the list among Bears corners, Bears defenders. So that's a positive. But if you're talking about a guy like Crevon LeBlanc being your next playmaker in the secondary, you got some issues. That's why the Bears did a good job in addressing that this year in the offseason as well as sort of in the draft. So look, last season there was problems, of course, when you looked at the offensive game plan. But defensively, when you looked at it, you had to look at Leonard Floyd and his progression. He almost got paralyzed. That was terrible against the Giants. That was like the worst thing ever. But overall, boy, there were some highlights, of course, and I'm just rambling on a little bit here, but that's all it is. That was all of what 3-13. You talk about, were they a 3-13 team? Nah, maybe not. But when you have Matt Barkley starting almost the majority of your games, you deserve to lose 13 games, right? And guys like Brian Hoyer. So for those who were knocking the Mike Glennon signing, I get it, right? You're paying him a lot of money just to be a bridge guy. Whatever the way you see it, I get your frustrations with Mike Glennon, and I absolutely understand your frustrations if, you look at the Trubisky draft pick and say, what the hell? There's a more qualified list, or at least on paper, next year in that quarterback draft class. You could have gone a different route and taken Jamal Adams, Malik Hooker, or whatever the case, Solomon Thomas, who was available no matter what you did. You didn't have to trade up to acquire one of those pieces, and they're pretty much close to as guaranteed as it gets on the defensive side. So, but at the end of the day, they finally took a path in the quarterback position that you can finally say, all right, well, now we have to just run with it. Because there's so many patchworkings that the Bears have done at that spot for so many years. Cutler was the solidified piece for a while, but he was mediocre at best, right? He ended up being legitimately 500 as a starter. So, I mean, the jury is obviously out of Mitch Trubisky, but last season we had to look at very few positives in this 3-13 club. Now, that kind of makes me feel a little bit better going into this season because there's no way, right? There's absolutely no way this team could be as bad as they were last year. But a healthy team is really the one thing that has to happen. They have to be on the field. And then you can fully evaluate John Fox. You can fully evaluate this year's draft class and even last year's draft class because we saw a lot of Ryan Pace's, later round picks not really making an impact on the field. So that's where we are as Bears fans right now. 6-10. Guys, 6-10, that is, for all things considered, a step in the right direction, in my opinion. But really, the record, and I'm going to continue to say this, the record shouldn't really matter. It's just the development of the specific star players, or at least, playmakers that we assume to be here for a while, see how they take a step forward. So, I mean, that was... Boy, I did a really terrible job in that Bears segment. I think I'm kind of upset with myself because I had so much in mind, right? When I was thinking about this segment, talking about last year's numbers, kind of making an argument to say that they weren't as bad as the numbers say, but they were. Defensively, they were about middle of the pack. I think we were ranked 15th or maybe close to the top 10 in terms of total defense, right? Defensively, they were top 5 in defending the pass, believe it or not. Actually, they were top 10. I think they were 7th, right, in terms of pass defense. So that has to be given credit to Vic Fangio and the way he, manipulated his defensive schemes and the emergence of guys like Cre'Von LeBlanc. And I already talked about that. So, look, I apologize, but the Bears, guys, it's June. I got to talk Bears, so sometimes I'm just going to ramble about nothing, and hopefully I entertained you enough to keep you interested to the end of this podcast, which is actually right now. Thank you guys so much for staying tuned. If you're on blogtalkradio.com/Behind the Pen, I appreciate you listening to me talk about things and stuff for about 45 minutes here. If you're on YouTube, give a like and a comment down below. Tell me I suck. That's cool. I understand it, but I'm still going to talk Bears. I'm going to be here for you. The Bears fix right here, Behind the Pen. If you need it, every single week, I'll have you covered. Guys, thank you again, as always, for checking in. Let me know what you want me to talk about in terms of the Chicago Bears going forward. Guys, I will happily oblige, and I will absolutely take on conversation because, of course, at this point of the offseason, unless there's breaking news, it's just, a wait and see until two-a-days. Training camp, minicamp, but training camp, right? And then the preseason, and then it starts to get going, but still a lot of time left. I talked baseball today, Cubs, bad, Nationals, good, Bears, let's go. Super Bowl, 57 this year, right? Who knows anymore. Anyway, thank you guys so much for checking out Behind the Pen this week. Come back next week for more, and of course, as always, we will see you all next time. Thank you guys for sticking around for this segment of Behind the Pen. If you want more most valuable podcast content, click on the video up above because I don't know why you wouldn't want to keep listening to our voices every day. But again, guys, thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate you.